All right, good evening, everyone. I'll call the meeting to order. Meeting of the Carver Select Board for Tuesday, November 21st, 2023. This meeting is being recorded by Area 58 Community Access Media Channel 15 and will be posted by Area 58 on YouTube as soon as possible. There are openings on several committees. Please refer to the front page on our website for a listing and application. If we could all stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our community prayer. Almighty God, humbly we pray your blessing as we concern our life with the opportunity to serve our community. Enhance us with your spirit of dignity and selflessness. May we become instruments of support and understanding as we seek to bring an environment of trust and purpose among all who provide the many services that make us all that we can become. Help us achieve the goals of our commitment in this office that is now our responsibility. And especially, we lift our prayers for all of the citizens of our community that we have been allowed to serve, that they may discover the fullness and joy of life that we all seek. And keep those serving in our armed forces and our first responders in our hearts and thoughts. Amen.
Amen.
All right, the first item on our agenda this evening, as always, is citizens' participation. Are there any members of the public that would like to address the board this evening? All right, seeing none. We'll move on to our next agenda item, which is an application for appointment to the Conservation Commission, Ann Chadwick Diaz. Ms. Chadwick Diaz, if you'd like to come up. And I know we saw you here just a short while ago. Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be back so soon. It was unexpected.
Is there anything you'd like to tell the board?
I think you all remember me from just a few months ago, so I'm not going to bore you too much, but lived here for 33 years, over 33 years, and served on school committee, and I'm very passionate about conservation and protecting our wetlands and sort of preserving the essence of Carver, which is, you know, taking care of our wetlands and making sure things are being done responsibly. So I'm very excited to be able to be considered for the Conservation Commission.
Great. Thank you. Are there any questions from the board?
I'm all set.
I was just going to thank you for coming again.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here. So
Yeah,
look
thank you
forward
for
to
stepping forward
participating.
again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I would just say your resume or your experience is fantastic. Thank you very much for coming back.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be able to. I think it's very important to obviously serve our community, and I have the time to do it, and I'm very passionate about it. So I look forward to learning a lot more.
Wonderful. Thank you. Anything else from the board?
I'll make a motion to appoint Ann Chadwick Diaz to the Conservation
Second.
Commission.
All
Second.
right, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
You will get
Nice
a
to
letter of
see you.
appointment from the office, and when you get that letter, you can come down and see the town clerk, and she can
Okay.
swear you in.
All
Okay?
right. Sounds very good.
All right,
Thank you very
great.
much.
Thank you. All right, next this evening is an update on King Richard's Fair from Chief of Police Dufely. Chief, if you'd like to come up. And Area 58, do we have anyone from the fair on Zoom?
Not at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
You want to text her to wait until she gets, till we get her on?
Well, no, we invited them, correct? So
Yes.
they know about it, so no, I think we can move along, and if they join, we'll add them to the meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
I think the last time we were here, we had a meeting that was not that pleasant, and I think after talking, things improved since then, so I thought it would be appropriate that we had everyone back to sort of update us on where things went from that meeting and how things looked at the end of the fair season.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, happy to be here, and thank you for giving me a few more minutes to speak about a better outcome than the first meeting. You're right, the meeting we had on that Friday was not one that I think anybody wanted to participate in, but I think it was necessary. And I believe the outcome from that meeting was a much better last few weekends of the fair. You recall at that meeting, we put in place some qualifications they needed to complete every week to run the fair, and that was to have the buses on standby and have Edaville ready. And I can tell you, I worked those 2 weekends in the road with those 2 extra police officers and with the buses in place and the parking lots up, and that made all the difference in the world. We were able to clear Route 58. I got some videos on my body cam video showing Route 58 wide open at 1:35 in the afternoon on some of the very busiest days we've had, which is, over the past 3 years, amazing. And clearly addresses the public safety issue that we, public safety chiefs, brought to you regarding getting access to vehicles, to homes or people along the way. We opened that right up, and it was amazing. We used the fact that they had to have the buses on standby and the parking lots open. Was a lot easier to convince them that we were going to use them because they were going to pay for them anyway. So as we filled up the parking lots and we got closer to filling up all 3, timely decisions were made each day, which the time changed every day because it really depended on how much traffic was coming in. Some days not as much traffic as others. And on the days when it was very busy, we were able to branch off, bring traffic down both Rochester Road and Meadow to Edaville, and leaving the traffic that was in the queue waiting with enough space in the parking lot to still fill up, but diverting the traffic around it. So within a very short period of time, the traffic on 58 was open and the traffic was flowing down those 2 roads to Edaville. We noticed that we probably could have used a few more buses because there was a bunch of people standing at Edaville waiting to get to the fair. But the fair, to their credit, did step up and try to order more buses. There were a couple of times they couldn't get any more through the school, and they went outside to another first student, I think it was, and we were able to hire a bus. I think we'd been around with 5 buses than the 4, but it was a great start. And it eliminated, like I said, 58 being plugged up with cars, which is one of the big problems we had. One of the other problems we noticed was people walking from Edaville the last time. We tried to use it the previous year, and that was a big issue, especially when the cones are still in the way, when we're using 58 to its max, when there's 3 lanes of traffic, because there's really nothing left for people to walk on. Again, this year, when we cleared 58, we took the cones out of the way. 58 went back to being normal 58, 2 lanes, fog lanes, and a place for people to walk. So even though we did have some walkers, which I'm not saying is a great thing, they were not in anywhere near the danger they had been in the previous year when we still had the cones in place. So the improvements, she's joining us now. The improvements that we made.
Sorry.
That's okay.
MA, welcome. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm just trying to start the video.
No, that's fine.
There we go. Hi.
And we did get to this agenda item a little early today. We're moving right
Okay.
along, so.
Okay. Just
So
wanna
you're
make
right, you're
sure-
right on time. It's us that's early. So we appreciate
Okay,
you joining
thank
us
you.
this evening.
Thank you. Not a problem. Glad
And
to be
the
here.
chief was, just to catch you up, the chief was just sharing some of the good news about the last few weeks of the fair regarding traffic and things like that. So,
Okay, great.
Chief.
So, yep, so we put that all in position, and it worked very, very well. The fair employees in the parking lots did their job very well. We moved some of them over to the Edaville parking lot. They did that very well. Again, the number of walkers was greatly decreased, and I don't think as much of a safety issue as it had been in the past, because at the same time, we're now cleared at 58. We got the cones out of the road, so 58's back open, and there is 2 lanes of traffic, but there's a fog line and plenty of room to walk. So I think from a public safety standpoint, the impositions that we put in place worked. I think that we worked very well with the fair to make those work, and I believe that we have a good plan in place moving forward for next year. I'll let MA speak to it, but she's already spoken with Edaville about using the parking lot again next year, and I believe that's all set. One of the other things that we were able to do by doing this is we avoided using Savory's Ave for parking. We used Edaville, keeping Savory's Ave in our back pocket as a backup to the backup in case, because if we get past Edaville, we need a place to put cars. But we didn't get that far. We didn't have to do that. We were able to get the cars that were on the road into Edaville and parked. And by not using Savory's Ave at the start, that helped us to clear 58 even quicker. And I think it worked out well. I know that eliminated some of the walkers coming in from Savory's Ave as they normally do and walking down one of the driveways, which is another issue. It's not a big problem, but it's an issue. So we solved a number of problems, I believe, and we got the patrons off the road into the fair, and we, again, opened 58 up, so there was no public safety issues. And I think if you ask the residents, we got a lot of compliments about how quickly they were able to get through the area this year compared to the past. We did have that one bad day, but the rest of the days really worked well, and I think if we continue on this path, we'll be in a good place for next year. I think we've already started discussions about it. The first 3 weeks of the fair are usually, I've never seen them exceed this, and I think we certainly can make a plan for those weeks different than the remaining weeks. So I think we can work with the fair to, to save some of the imposition and maybe push it to the end of the weeks, end of the fair when it's busier. But I think that we've developed a good working relationship, or improved a working relationship with AMA and with the fair, and I think we're moving forward in a positive direction. So
That's good news, thank you. May, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, basically, it did run very smoothly and very well, and the chief, as always, was great to work with, and we've had no complaints, at least on our end, from residents. The few people that would walk would be people that were parking in residents' driveways and that they're being charged to park there, not following our free parking, signage and so forth. So unfortunately, it's something we can't control, but for the most part, there wasn't any issues like that. The only problems we have are obviously the rain days. No one can control the weather, and I know you've heard us say this till we're blue in the face, but first few weekends of the fair are never crazy busy, and the rainy days aren't busy. So it's just a matter of just keeping an open dialogue and working with you guys and with the chief. And I think that we can come up with a really good way that next year will be the best one yet.
Great, thank you. There are questions from the board? Mr. Ryan?
We had talked about the signage to alert people if it was sold out. Did that go in a place? Did it help? Did we not get sold? Was it not sold out?
So we did have the signboards that we mentioned previous, and then we also brought in 2 signboards that the state provided, and those were helpful. Those did get the message. I don't want to belittle any drivers while we're sitting here, but I did notice that even with 3 flashing signboards saying
Sold out.
lots full, go to Edaville, people still drove right past all of them to Edaville and said, well, where am I supposed to park? At Edaville, where those signs told you. You see them, but honestly, I don't mean to pick on people because it's not. I'm not trying to, but I think people are so focused on the GPSs nowadays that it's saying to go there. It's not. Listen, the GPS doesn't see the signs, right? So I give them credit for that. But even with all those signs in place, we still had a few drive by. But that was a lot greatly mitigated by the fact that most followed the signs and went to where we needed them to go. You know what I mean? And as I mentioned before, it's a. May's mentioned it as well. It's a real time decisions that have to be made. Like each day, it changes. Some days we wouldn't have the whole queue waiting to go filled up, so we didn't make the decision to split to Edaville yet because we weren't there. So other days when we were full up in that queue and we were getting close to fill and C, we made the decision at that point to work with the fair to open it up. And that, by being able to work on that in real time, it accomplishes the goal we want to accomplish. It keeps enough cars in the queue to fill the rest of the parking lot, but it starts diverting the other cars to Edaville earlier, thus, again, making the problem less. We got pretty well with the fair parking lot about making that decision so that when the cars who were coming northbound in the middle lane, the middle queue, when we cut it off, we were just about completely, we'd completely fill C lot and still only have a few left in the queue, which was, we tried to get the number down to as small as we could, right? Because those cars had to come in, make a U-turn and go back down to Edaville. But by the end of the year, we got that down, not to a science, but to a lot closer number for that few left over that had to go to Edaville. So I think working together is what is, and having the ability to put the cars somewhere else is what lets us be able to make it work. Okay. So it worked out very well. The signs, I believe the signs are helpful. I just, like I said, it's funny to be standing there going, yeah, you drove by 3 big flashing signboards. I didn't see them. Okay, well, turn around and go to Edaville because that's where you're going to park. So, and I think that's going to happen no matter what, because like I said, I think people are focused more on their GPS. It's telling them come to that address than anywhere else. But they were effective.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Anyone?
Nope.
No? I guess the only question I have, probably more for Amy than the chief, is the plan next year as far as ticketing to continue with the dated online tickets?
Yes, we are definitely going to continue with the dated online tickets. And again, that was a first year thing with us this year. So we perfected it by the end of what we want to do differently for next year. so it'll be even smoother. And then I just wanted to touch too on the signage note that, yes, sometimes people aren't looking at the signs or looking at their GPS, but we were never sold out per se. It was a matter of parking lot being full and going to an auxiliary lot. So just I know it just making sure it's not that it wasn't an attendance thing, it was a car thing, and that. So, but that helped. And then also our publicist would also post on social media, parking, main parking lot full, go to Edaville, auxiliary lots. So that also helped too.
Okay.
Great. All right. That's it for everyone? All right. MA, Chief, do you have anything you'd like to add?
You mean?
I'm good. I just hope you all
Everybody
have a
good?
great Thanksgiving.
All right.
Yes.
MA,
Happy
same to you.
Happy
All right.
Thanksgiving, and thank you, everybody, for your support and continue this. I think we're getting to a good point in this where we can accommodate the fair and the residents at the same time, so,
Okay, great.
thank you. All right,
Thank you.
thanks for your time.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Amy. Have a great night. All right, the next item on our agenda is our fiscal 2024 tax classification hearing, but that's scheduled for 6:35. We're a little early for that. So I think what we should do is skip over that item for now and go to our discussion and possible vote on the 61A right of first refusal to 0 Lakeview Street. Assessors map 8, lots 29, and South Main Streets, lots 29-1 and 29-2. Mr. Bott? Thank you for joining us again this evening.
Happy to be here. I'm Tom Bott, I'm the town planner here in Carver, Mass. And I just want to clarify something on the agenda as we talked about at the last meeting. There won't be a vote tonight because the vote is that product of the hearing that's scheduled for the 29th. So
Well-
that was the discussion that we had had a couple weeks ago about setting up that hearing for November 29th, because in order to have that vote has to be at the posted hearing, which is currently posted for the 29th.
But
I can give you an update on where we're at in work.
that's fine, but I think this board was informed by the town administrator that we could choose to cancel that hearing.
Correct, but I understand from town council that in order to have the vote, you have to have the hearing.
Well, I haven't had that conversation with town council, nor have I been informed of any conversation with town council. So we'll have our discussion and we'll see where we go.
All right.
Okay.
So if I can start off with the thoughts of a couple select board members who said at the previous meetings that they felt this seemed rushed. And I've said quite publicly in a number of venues, in a number of towns over the years, that land use laws aren't necessarily written to benefit municipalities because developers and builders seem to be more influential with the legislature in order to get those sort of things done. So we are on a time frame. We're on day 68 of the 128 days we have to determine if the town wants to exercise its right of first refusal. So to a number of questions that came up that were forwarded to me by the town administrator through, I think, a couple different board members perhaps that ask him questions about things. What are we building there? What could be built on the site? Based on the conversations with the health agent, and in the interim, I've met with all the department heads at the technical review committee meetings, individually department heads, including the building commissioner and the health agent, to better understand the constraints to the site. So the question is, what are we building specifically, what type of septic systems and things like that. So there's capacity for approximately 12 bedrooms, not 12 units, but 12 bedrooms on the site, absent any public water supply with a conventional septic system. I had suggested previously that we might see an additional, some greater densities for something like that. But what I had proffered before was if we acquired the property and did an RFP for developers to look at developing the site, that would be with a nitrogen-reducing septic system in order to minimize the environmental issues, and with a nitrogen-reducing system, that capacity could be a bit higher. I think Arthur Borden, in his comments to the select board, I did see a copy of his email, noted there may be 12 to 14 bedrooms available on the site. But that remains to be seen. But I want to make sure that you understand that the scale we were looking at previously, I talked about with 4 dwelling units per acre. That's likely not something you can achieve at the site without public water supply and the nitrogen-reducing systems both. So we're probably looking at something in the area of 12 to 14 bedrooms. That's not units, that's bedrooms. And how do we split those out? As we talked about before, there's a need, as identified in the housing production plan, for units that are smaller units, 2-bedroom units. So that might equate to 6 2-bedroom houses, 3 duplexes with 2 to 3 units in them on the site without any extraordinary measures other than the nitrogen-reducing septic system, because that's one of those things that I sort of laid out as a sort of a threshold issue in order to both preserve the protect the environment and provide some additional capacity for the site. You know, we said on day 68 in the report I'm preparing for the board that you'll have on Monday with all these things laid out, including the chronology and a couple of layouts for what might happen on the site. You know, the question was, well, was the Board of Health involved in this initially? And apparently not, because that's not the process the town has. When they send out that letter for 61A, it goes to the assessors, the planning board, and the Conservation Commission, all of which met on the site, met and talked about the site and offered their recommendations to the board. From what I understand from talking to the developer, who's here tonight, the prospective developer, Mr. Collin, is that the property owner's not interested in extending that deadline. So we're definitely looking at that 120-day date. And based on town council's conversations we've had, that's going to require a town meeting prior to January 14th, if the town wishes to exercise that issue. Question about what triggers a public water supply. Basically, uses by 25 people is that threshold for what triggers a public water supply. Something akin to those 6 2-bedroom houses or something like that that are consistent with what's proposed for in the housing production plan. Where are we at in our due diligence? Town council has ordered a title search to review past titles. We reached out to our consulting engineer, Fuss and O'Neill, about a 21E. They said it takes about 3 weeks to do that, and they are queued up and ready to go if the select board is to give an affirmative vote. The town council tells me that the title search should be done, they requested the title search be completed by November 22nd. Our consulting engineer said it takes about 3 weeks. If we were to have a vote on the 29th, they'd be ready to proceed the next day. And we'd see that report likely around the middle of December on the 21E issues. I've done a number of site visits to places that are that you may equate to something we might build on the site, because people need a visual to kind of have an understanding of what's might happen out there. So I've got working with our neighbors in Plymouth, where I live. They let me in town hall every once in a while there, so I got the opportunity to meet with Lee Hartman and Robin Carver, who are both very cognizant of some other developments that have been built both in the Pine Hills and Red Brook, and looking at sort of samples what you might see there. So in my report that I'll bring you, I'll show you a couple different layouts for how you might convey 2-bedroom units and how they might line up on the site. We proceed along with answering these questions and doing our due diligence, but it gets down to what's the town's appetite for that. In addition to the technical folks I've spoken with, because I have an ongoing relationship with Habitat on 11 Green Street, we recently had a conversation about whether this might be something that Habitat might be interested in. Not that you give anything to anybody, it's an RFP to look at something like that. But they expressed an interest in it. I think I previously mentioned, have talked conversations with the CPC, and the CPC they don't have an application or a vetting process, but based on the conversations we had, the CPC certainly seemed willing to consider the merits of spending the money that's already in the account for the acquisition of this property. But that requires a town meeting vote to get to that point. So we're looking at 12, maybe 14 bedrooms on the site with a nitrogen-reducing septic system for smaller 2-bedroom units. likely 1 3-bedroom unit as well, because when we work with DHCD on an affordable housing development, they've got a requirement that requires at least 10% of those to be 3-bedroom. So we're continuing to do our due diligence and moving forward and having a fairly explicit report for you by Monday, so you can take that into account if we in fact hold that hearing on the 29th, as we talked about before, that's been advertised.
Just a couple of follow-up questions, I think, on things that I might have asked at the last meeting. So just so I make sure I have it right, so 25 people on this site would equal the need for a public water supply?
Yeah, that's the number that Kevin Ford gave me. He said,
Okay.
25 people equals public water supply, and that equates to, 2 people in a house, 12 bedrooms, 24 people.
Well, so that was my question. So is there a standard number of people that they assume per bedroom? Is it 2? Is that the number?
Yeah, that's the number that Kevin gave.
So the most we could have on that site would be 12 bedrooms then, otherwise we'd have to go into a public water supply.
With the nitrogen-reducing septic system, there's probably a plus or minus a couple bedrooms on that, but for the purposes of being conservative, let's keep it at 12 bedrooms.
Okay.
I don't want to, overpromise or over-speculate, so it might be built on the site. And that's why developers look at, I got 3 units on the site, I put 3, 3-bedroom houses on the site. I've essentially got 12 people living on those 3 lots. So I think that's probably the constraint. But for a standard single-family lot, there'd be a house and a septic system on the site. In this case, in my conversations with Kevin, there might be a collective septic system for 2 units, or 6 units together, and similar with a well or 2 wells on the site to provide water for the units. Those sort of things would require a homeowners association in order to manage wells, the septic system, in order to make sure that money's in there to replace the septic system, as well as using the potentially the rear access for to access the lots, because you can rear-loaded housing is one of those things that we see in areas where you want to kind of keep the cars off the front of the property, and rather than having 6 curb cuts along the front of the street, potential for accessing the property both from Lakeview and to the far end of the property where that sort of alleyway comes out, that heads to the bogs, something like that to minimize the number of curb cuts and people trying to get out on Carver, on Main Street from their driveways.
Okay. Other questions from the board? Right. Mr. Ryan?
Yes, sure. Could we kind of go through the process? So we have the hearing, we have to go to town meeting. We allocate the funds, we purchase the property, and then we would contract with someone to build the units and do the design after that?
Yeah, we
the
would
town-
do requests for proposals for developers.
Okay.
Whether we would work, and likely work with that developer with DHCD on a friendly 40B in order to create the housing, the number of houses there, because 6 units on the site likely doesn't comply with Carver zoning, and for the most part, most affordable housing developments go through a friendly 40B process for something like that in order to allow those units to be built, but still maintain the environmental aspects of the site.
So if we go to town meeting to purchase a property, are we also putting money aside for paying a contractor or the whole design? Is that going to happen all at once, or is this like just buy the property, let it sit there, and then do a separate town meeting for then you have to come up with the funds for the design and the building and all that?
Yeah,
How
I
does
think that's
that work?
likely a trip to CPC potentially for some
Okay.
funds, some additional funds for something like that. But to start the process, we've got some funds in the planning office for what's called other purchase services that we could look at, some of those things to bring somebody on to help with some of those, helping develop the RFP.
Okay. So then again, if we have to have design for the septic and the water, we don't know if it's going to be common or some individuals, so all that has to be worked out in the long run.
That comes all out in the RFP.
Okay. And then now that the town's finished that, is the town on the hook for maintaining the septic and the the water, or is that?
Well, that would fall to the homeowners association that I mentioned. If you're going to do
Okay.
6 units on the site, then with a collective septic system, that sort of speaks to how do you maintain something like that? How do you make sure you've got the reserves to replace it and maintain it in the future?
Okay.
So that would likely be a homeowners association.
So the town sells this property now? Is that how
Yeah, in the
this works?
RFQ, with the property, ownership of the property would transfer. Those bogs, those lots that we saw with the lines that go out into the bogs, as I said in a previous meeting, those were created in order to get the square footage that's required under zoning to make them buildable lots.
Okay.
Under this scenario, we don't really have an interest or a need in owning that property, so we would likely spin that back off to the developer or to the bog owners out back, because there really isn't a need for the bogs, and I think it's probably problematic for a homeowners association to own half of the cranberry bog. It just seems very untenable as it's laid out right now.
Okay. So I think in summary, the way I'm understanding it is we go to town meeting, we allocate funds to purchase the property. We may use CPC funds for the building of the property, the design and all that, and then they get sold. And then the money comes back into the town.
Some to that effect, yes.
Okay.
But the first window is the 120 days.
Right.
And as I said, it seems rushed because that's just what the schedule is. So we're on day 68 and continue to move forward in doing our due diligence.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Ms. Hewens?
Mr. Bott, you mentioned us, in your letter, you mentioned us deeding the property to the RDA and letting them go through all that.
Well, I think that, I think one of the questions was, could the right of first refusal be deeded to the RDA and let them deal with that? According to town council, the RDA is not a subdivision of municipal government, of state government. So the RDA can't accept the right of first refusal to act on that, but they could certainly participate in the process as we go through developing things, because they've done a fair amount of work in the property business, to their credit. I mean, they're pretty impressive considering they're a group of folks like you guys who are just sort of sorting it out.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Mr. Hoffman?
So the CPC, they haven't approved, or they haven't voted on this yet, correct?
No, because that requires an application
Okay.
and a hearing process. Basically, my meeting with them was, we have this piece of property that we're looking at developing, and the potential is to create affordable housing on it, a number of units to be determined. But as I've said before, CPCs are usually pretty comfortable with open space and historic preservation, because those are things that people come to them with, and they're tangible and they're easy to see. But oftentimes CPCs are frustrated with the affordable housing component, the third leg of those funds, because they don't quite know what to do with them. In Kingston, we had this issue on a pretty regular basis. And it's not uncommon in lots of small towns. So having an opportunity to use those CPC funds that are already on account for that $400,000, that would be consistent with the requirements of CPC, and move forward with achieving some of the town's goals.
So if they didn't vote to approve this, what would this issue be?
So we would submit an application to CPC that they would act on for a special town meeting, likely before January 14th.
Okay.
The application's fairly straightforward. I've done a few prior to, but like I said, we didn't have a hearing, we didn't have it was just simply a conceptual discussion with them. And I think that likely unanimous from the folks who were sitting at the table. They thought, well, this would be a great opportunity for us to expend affordable housing funds that we have on account and don't really have a direct means, a lot of great ideas how to spend it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Ryan?
So I think part of this discussion, why we had it on the agenda, was to say, are we ready? Would we be prepared for the hearing? Do we think that we've got everything ready to go to present at the hearing? So that was the open question. What do we think we still need to get done for the hearing? And
Yeah, like I said,
What's left?
I've assembled a lot of these things. I'm working on the report right now, and my anticipation is to have it in your inboxes by Monday.
Okay.
All right. And Mr. Ryan, to your point, I think something has developed
Yeah.
since then regarding the hearing,
know.
and that is that the Carver High School football team has made the Super Bowl. And I think that there might be I don't know how many folks from town would like to come and speak at this public hearing, but I think certainly I think it would be a bad idea for this board to hold a public hearing on the same night as such a major item. I think the time we had set for the public hearing was 6 o'clock. I think the game is, someone correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 5:30.
Right.
So you couldn't possibly do both on that night. And I think if this board is of a mind to go forward with the public hearing, I think my recommendation would be that we consider changing the date of the public hearing. I just, speaking for myself, I don't think it would be appropriate to hold a public hearing
On the 29th?
that night.
And how does that impact the timing of everything? So there's a minimum, we have to post or repost the hearing, and
Yeah, so one of the questions I had, and Mr. Bott, or perhaps Ms. Weston, one of you can answer that. If we change the public hearing, is it possible just to re-advertise the public hearing?
Well, my take from years of planning board hearings, and they may differ somewhat from the select board hearing, is that if you were to have a hearing for a particular date, and this happens where people aren't quite ready, there's an absence, there's a snowstorm or something like that, that you would meet to essentially open the hearing, take no testimony, and continue to date certain. So let's say that you were going to try to do this the next week. You would say, all right, here we are on the 29th. We have a hearing that opens. We are not going to take any testimony on that. We will continue to date certain, and everybody would come. No need for additional advertisement. Just changing the date by announcing it at the date of the hearing.
But I guess if you wanted to avoid that, could you just re-advertise the hearing for a new date? And avoid having to do that?
And we still got that 2 weeks of hearing notices, so
Right.
it's just going to push that date further back.
Right, but it would just push it back a week. And, it sounds like we could use the extra time anyway. I don't know the answer to that. I don't have the experience with those public hearings to know, so.
yeah.
We can definitely get an opinion from town council, but legally, if you are posting a hearing and then canceling another hearing, you're still within the confines of the law.
Okay.
And we would definitely have to heavily advertise that, so people aren't changing their plans to try to get here when we're canceling a hearing for the
Okay.
benefit of the public.
So I guess my next question would be, if we were to go that route, obviously Thursday is Thanksgiving, Town Hall is closed on Friday, so I don't know when the next date would be we could publish the hearing. Do we have the ability to do that on either tomorrow or Friday, either Town Hall is closed? I don't know the answer.
If you determine a date tonight, we can get that advertised.
So
Okay. First of all, we should discuss that as a board. Does the board feel that we should move that? Is that something the board thinks we should do, or something we shouldn't do?
I think given the conflict, a lot of people, unless we can move the hearing to Gillette, then a lot of people will be there. So there's a conflict. So I think we want to work around that conflict if we want to allow the public to be here and not have to deal with the conflict. Then the question is, if we go 2 weeks from tomorrow, or does
We'll
that
just hold on for one second, Mr. I just want to make sure we have a majority of the
Okay.
board that actually wants to move the hearing.
The hearing, okay.
So is there anyone that feels we shouldn't move the hearing? Let me put it that way.
I guess I have a question. So before my understanding at the last meeting, we pushed it to this meeting, moved it forward to decide if we want to even have a hearing. Right? So we can, whether or not we're going to use our right of first refusal or not. Right?
That was my understanding as well. It sounds like this evening, according to Mr. Bott, that's not, there's been some guidance from town council that
So you
indicates that
do
that's...
not have to have a hearing if you do not wish to exercise your right of first refusal. So if the answer is no, we don't want it, then you can say that tonight, and there's no hearing required to say no.
All right.
There is a hearing, it is required to say yes.
Okay. So before we, yes,
Just
Mr.
maybe a point of order. We had a hearing scheduled for 6:35. We're kind of over now by 5 minutes. I don't know if that's a conflict or if we're okay to keep going on this
Yeah, I
topic.
think the hearing can happen later. It just can't happen earlier.
Okay, thank you.
So I think we should
Keep going.
keep going with this and finish up. So I guess that's the point, to Mr. Hoffman's point. The first thing we should decide is, does the board want to decline their right of first refusal? We could do that if the board felt they wanted to do that.
Just for clarification, and maybe we can go back and look at the minutes, I thought we voted to have the hearing. The purpose of this meeting was to see if we were ready to have the hearing, if for some reason we didn't feel we were prepared. So I thought the vote that we took at the last meeting was to go forward with a hearing. It wasn't whether or not we didn't want to have a hearing.
That's correct.
That was the vote. That was the vote, but
Right, so the purpose tonight was to say, are we prepared enough to continue down the path of a hearing, or do we feel we're not prepared? Seems like what the agenda item for tonight was, from what I understand.
Sure, but I think the agenda item, the wording on the agenda is the same as the last agenda, so I think if...
Okay,
I don't think
if
we
the-
took a vote last time. We
Yeah, we did.
we did take a vote.
took a vote
To have a public hearing. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we did. We did take a vote, I believe,
We did.
to go forward with a
you
public
set the
hearing,
date.
and we set the date.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
But as I said, the hearing's only required if you're going to say yes. If the board decided, I feel rushed, I don't want to do this, then you could vote no at the drop of a hat.
So if I don't hear any kind of motion on anything else, I think we should discuss a date, a new date for the public hearing. Obviously, we want to have a date that the board everyone can make. So folks should probably check their calendars. If my calendar were open, I could pick that calendar. So 2 weeks from tomorrow, if we posted it tomorrow, could we have the hearing 2 weeks from tomorrow, or does it have to be?
I believe you can.
I
So,
think the paper needs 2 days.
okay,
It doesn't get posted the day you send it in.
okay, so they probably wouldn't post it till, well, 2 days would be the 24th. So 2 weeks from that is the 8th, which is a Friday. That's probably not a good day for a public hearing. So that brings us to the next week. We have that Tuesday, which is the 12th. We don't have a meeting scheduled for that night, so if the board felt that would work for them, we could schedule the hearing for Tuesday, December 12th.
I'm out of town that day.
Okay. We have a meeting. I mean, I'm trying to be cognizant of that 120 days as well. We have a meeting on the 5th, but we can't post it for that day because that's too soon.
Can't
Well,
do
if
this.
I may, I
Yes.
think my take is if on the 29th, the board has a quorum to meet, the board could say on the 29th, we are continuing the hearing to December whatever, without having to advertise again. So I think it gives you more flexibility to hold that hearing date at the 29th and just have a motion at that meeting to continue the hearing to date certain.
What if the board doesn't have a quorum?
Then that would be problematic to continue the hearing. As you and I talked before, I've been in circumstances where there was a storm or something like that where the board couldn't meet. And I have basically come and appeared on television to say there will be no meeting tonight because of a lack of a quorum. all these items that are scheduled for tonight will be continued to date certain, and read the agenda and essentially say, item 1, item 2, item 3, continued to 12/6, 12/18, whatever the date may be.
Can we, oh, you're out of town. Are you out of town that whole week, Jim?
Just actually the day that, just the 12th.
Would it be
Do it
possible, any chance you could join that public hearing remotely? I just have concerns for a quorum on the 29th.
Or could we do the 13th, the day after?
Yeah? When are you back?
I'm just,
Just out the 12th?
I'm actually flying home and back the same day.
Okay. How
Never
about,
back.
how about that Monday? How about the 11th? Would that work for everybody? Mr. Carter?
Sure.
Monday, Monday, December 11th? Okay. So, Ms. Weston, could you re-advertise the hearing for Monday, December 11th?
Yes, at 6 p.m.
That's 6 p.m. Work for everyone?
Do you need a vote?
I think we do.
Okay, I just add one thing.
Yes, Mr. Carter.
I'm not sure who would prepare it, but for this, I guess, hearing, can we get, exactly, you're going to have all your information to us by Monday?
That's what I'm working on.
Okay. And then have some kind of calendar that says this is what has to happen by such and such dates. We talked about it tonight, but just something in writing in order to meet whatever we need to meet, to have a town meeting, to have a vote, to have 21E, to have plans designed, to have Board of Health sign off, whatever needs to get done. Can we just get that in a 1 or 2 page?
Yeah, I've got, here's what the chronology looks like so far, so we're just adding to it as we move along. So yes, that's already in the midst of preparing. So what are the deadlines, what are the drop dead dates?
Mr. Bott, what is the 120th day? Do you have that information?
I believe it is January 14th.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right, is there a motion to re-advertise the hearing?
I do have another question,
Yes.
please. So how much time do we need to get an article or articles ready for town meeting to post after that? Are we running up against a deadline of, we need 30 days or something to have the warrant posted, and so just trying to factor that in and understand where we are in the timeline.
I'm sure town council will work with us to get an article together
Okay.
timely.
I think we need, memory serves me correctly, we need 14 days to post a special town meeting.
A special town meeting does have a longer posting, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we should be okay if we met on,
Yeah, it would require us to move expeditiously, yeah.
Okay.
No doubt, but,
So the special meeting would have to be done before the 14th of June, not January, correct?
Yes.
yes. Yes.
So the people I have not spoken to is the school about the availability of a room for town meeting.
Okay.
But, we talked with just about every department except school so far on this.
Well, we'd have to talk to the school, the town clerk,
Correct.
but I guess we should get to the hearing first and see where that goes, and then we'll find out whether we need it or not.
Correct.
But, okay.
okay.
All right, is there a motion?
Motion to have the public hearing for this site on the Tuesday, December 11th at 6 p.m.
Monday.
Mondays.
Oh,
Monday,
Monday, sorry,
December 11th.
Monday, you're right. Monday, December 11th.
Okay, I wonder if the motion needs to say re-advertise the hearing. What are your thoughts?
Motion to re-advertise the public hearing for this site for Monday, December 11th at 6 p.m.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this?
So I have a question.
Yes.
So we have the public hearing, and then at the end of the public hearing, if we don't want to move forward with this, we then can,
Correct.
I think we'd have a public hearing.
Right.
I would anticipate having a public hearing with an agenda item following it that night to take a vote, whether to go forward or not.
okay.
I would think that would happen all the same night. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this? All right, hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Bott, thank you once again.
You're welcome.
Have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
All righty, will do, and look forward to some exciting reading next week.
Thank you.
very much.
All right, now we'll move back to our 6:35 agenda item, which is the fiscal 2024 tax classification hearing with the Board of Assessors. If you folks would like to come up, thank you for bearing with us.
No worries.
Would you like to come up as well? Plenty of room. Plenty of room and an extra microphone.
Once in a while, it's nice to be anonymous.
They were
Welcome back. Good to see you all again.
Thank you.
If you could just introduce yourself for the folks at home?
Sure. I'm Joe Roach. I'm the town assessor. I'm joined by Ellen Blanchard, Chair of the Board of Assessors, and Mike Paddock, member of the Board of Assessors.
All right, great. Thank you.
Of course.
All right.
We've all gone through the classification hearing before, so it's a pretty straightforward process. Tonight, the Board of Selectmen takes 4 votes. They vote to split the tax rate and adopt a residential factor. They vote whether or not to adopt an open space discount. They vote whether or not to adopt a residential exemption, or whether or not to adopt a small business exemption. So, I'll just run through some information regarding the values, proposed tax rates, and how they would affect people's tax bills. And then I think we can take these one by one at the end, starting with the exemptions and finish with setting the rate.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. So on page 3 of your packet, you see the levy limit worksheet from the DOR. Page 4 is just an easier way to read that. So our allowable levy for fiscal year 2024 is $32,148,116. Last year we had a levy of $29,048,550. We picked up $747,402 in amended growth. We picked up $582,452 in regular growth, and we had the regular 2.5% budget increase that's allowed under Proposition 2.5. That gives you a levy limit subtotal of $31,123,303, and to add it to that is the debt exclusion of $1,024,813, which is how you get to your levy limit for fiscal '24.
Okay, and just so folks at home are clear, that's the debt exclusion was voted several years ago. That's not a new debt exclusion.
No, correct. I believe that was for the middle school.
The
I
middle,
believe.
yeah, I think it's for the elementary school.
Oh, elementary school.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to page 5, that's the assessment classification report, or if you want to sound like an assessor, it's the LA4. And same thing on page 6, it's just sort of an easier breakdown to read it because I know that form's a little bit small. But looking at the LA4, it's going to give you the total number of parcels per property type, whether it's residential, open space, commercial, industrial, personal property, and the value of those types of parcels. So our residential class is by far the largest. It has a value which is approved as of last week at $1,728,130,039, and that, along with the open space, of which there's none, makes up 83.6167% of the town's value. The commercial, industrial, and personal property classes have a percentage subtotal, a percentage of the value at 16.3833%. Page 7 of the packet shows you the different shift percentages. So if we had adopted a uniform rate where everybody's paying the same tax rate, you're looking at your residential properties and your commercial, industrial, personal properties having a tax rate of $15.54. This chart shows it in 5% increments going down to 150%, which is the maximum we can shift. For the past several years, the select board has maintained a shift of 145%. And if you look at the charts below the top chart, it shows you this year what our average single home value is, which is $480,400, and what those adopted rates would result in property taxes. The chart below that shows your average commercial value, which is $560,600, and the same thing. It's going to show you your commercial tax rates and what your average commercial property tax bill would be. And page 8 of the packet is a comparison year over year. So last year, the average single-family home in Carver was $6,542. If you look over at the third column of that top chart, it shows you at which shift percentage the new tax bill would be and the difference in tax dollars. And looking down at the following chart, you'll see the same thing for the commercial properties. The Board of Assessors has, made recommendations on how they feel they would like to shift, and if they'd like to speak to that. Go for it.
Whoops. I need that. We, as a group, have over 45 years' experience as assessors. And we understand, being that we are all taxpayers here, the members of the board, how this affects us. We have always been concerned about reaching the 150% shift, and we encourage the select board every year to go to a lower rate, 140%, as opposed to the 145 that has been the rule for the last few years. This would amount to a $337.17 increase in property taxes for the average single-family tax bill. The commercial would also increase even if we go down to the 140% of $400.73 on the average commercial tax bill. And we're very cognizant of the fact that even though there wasn't a lot of sales to review this year, that with the way that the mortgage rates are right now and the sale prices are not shifting downward, that this is really not a hardship at this point for people, and I can only speak for myself as far as my tax bill goes, which has more than doubled over the last few years. But I think it's pretty fair to say that all we're concerned about is fair and equitable values. When the budget increases, our taxes go up, and we all know that. And so for us to, to say that we're going to be able to lower the taxes, we can't do that because every year the town's budget goes up. So, but we would recommend trying to get closer to, we'll never probably ever get to a single tax rate. We've had a split tax rate since 1982. So it's quite likely that will not change. However, if we can get it lower, we think that's a positive thing for the town and the taxpayers. Thank you.
Mr. Baddock?
Let me add them. I appreciate you guys and the work you do. I wouldn't rather be sitting on your side of the table. The decisions you guys have to make. Two things about this. One is, am I back feeding?
No.
Okay. One of them is just the issue of fairness. We arbitrarily have decided to tax our businesses at 45% more than the average resident, and even though most of our businesses in town are very small, it's a pretty significant thing that we've been doing. The thing I'm thinking about here is both the intent of the law, and the tax shift law was intended to be able to take a city or a town that has a high industrial base and a very low income residential base and try to even that out a little bit to make it fairer. That's not the case in Carver. It's pretty rarely the case in southeastern Massachusetts at all, and I missed our last meeting, so I didn't get to ask the question whether or not you had seen the list of the surrounding towns and how many of them actually have a shifted tax rate. And if you would see that we're one out of a very small handful. So we do things in this town that just aren't done and that seem unfair. Or as our assessing company once called it, they said that it was cruel what we do to businesses in this town. Now, I get the bigger picture here, but we as a group have consistently for the last 12 years since I've been on here, have been trying to bring this back to a more reasonable spot instead of ratcheting up as far as we can go. So we hope the town would consider this as a positive thing for the town and to make our town a little more fairer for everyone involved. Well, comes to the same.
All right. And if we don't have any questions now, I think I'd like to run through the exemptions quickly, just give you a brief overview of them, or
Well,
you want to go over any
Yeah,
questions?
before we
or
do that, let me
respond?
just ask, are there any members of the public that would like to speak tonight? And I don't see any, so that's fine. Why don't we go right to
Okay.
those items?
So like I said at the beginning, you have 4 motions to make. They've been the same 4 motions. 3 of them typically don't change. So the first exemption that is out there is an open space discount. Carver has no open space parcels. We have protected open land, but we have no land assessed as open space. Our open space land is protected through a variety of other mechanisms, whether it's 61A, B, 61, or conservation restrictions, or Buzzards Bay Coalition, or things of that nature, town conservation land. So we don't have any parcels to apply an open space discount to, and currently only one town in the state has adopted an open space discount, even though they don't have any open space parcels to apply it to. So it's sort of a moot point. So regarding that matter, the board recommended that the select board not adopt an open space discount.
Can I ask you what would be an example of open space that would get an open space discount?
It's land that could otherwise, well, first of all, it can't be classified under 61A,
Okay.
61 or 61B. It has to be capable of producing income, and it has to be in an open and natural condition allowable for the benefit of the public. So theoretically, there are parcels that may qualify for that. However, the board, the office, assessors in general, don't classify them as open space. We classify it as vacant and undevelopable, perhaps, or it's rear access backland that's already taxed at a very reduced rate. So in, I believe it's Southampton or Holyoke, they have a couple of open space parcels, and they're on the back side of a mountain that doesn't have access from their town. So in theory, it could be logged. It's not being logged, and it's in an open and natural condition. So that's sort of an example of what an open space parcel could be, but it doesn't provide any benefits to the town in terms of a lien being placed on the property. The town wouldn't have a right of first refusal and be able to purchase it if the landowner moved it out of open space, and there would be no rollback for the discount that had been provided when it had been classified as open space. So it's really, there's a reason why only a couple towns have it, and it's because it's not a great program.
Okay. And your recommendation is that we not offer an open space discount?
Correct. Not adopt an open space
All
discount.
right, thank you. Is there a motion from the board on this?
On the open space? Sure.
Yeah.
So I'll move that we do not adopt a discount for the open space.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion, questions from the board?
No, I just, Mr. Roach said this, but I just want to point out that town-owned conservation lands are not considered open space under this definition.
Correct. So, I mean, from our point of view, it's classified as an exempt property, which starts with a 9 when you're looking at a state class code. This would be looking at properties that start with a 2, which is for open space. It's just an assessment definition that really doesn't correlate. Our next exemption is
Well, why don't we take a vote on
I'm
this one
sorry.
first? So we have a motion and a second not to adopt
Excited.
the open space discount. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Sorry.
No, well, I'm sorry, I rushed you guys. All right, next up, we have a residential exemption. So a residential exemption exists to provide a benefit to year-round residents. You know, so in towns on the Cape, so essentially Provincetown through Barnstable and Falmouth, not Sandwich, Sandwich doesn't have one, but those 14 towns on the Cape have a residential exemption, where within the residential property class, residents whose primary domicile is in that town receive a value-based exemption. In exchange, there's a higher tax rate. So parcels that are not occupied by somebody as their domicile in town would pay at a higher rate. Those who are whose domicile is in Carver would pay at a lower value. However, it's at a higher rate. Same thing. So it's the Cape and the Islands. It's Boston, Watertown, Somerville, Cambridge. It's areas with large seasonal populations and also, you know, people who are renting out second properties. Carver, you know, doesn't have a large inventory of seasonal rentals, so really there'd be nowhere to shift that rate to, and it's just not really appropriate. It would be it wouldn't provide much of a benefit for anybody.
So your recommendation would be that we not adopt a residential exemption?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there a motion on this?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. And so the third exemption is the small commercial exemption. This is another value-based exemption. So every year, the Board of Assessors receives a list from the Department of Labor Statistics, I believe, with businesses in town that have fewer than 10 employees and have a mailing address or a physical address in Carver. In order for the real estate to qualify, they would either have to be on that list or meet the criteria of how people get on that list, having 10 fewer employees in all locations. On the real estate side, these parcels have to be valued at less than $1 million. So looking at the list, there's not very many parcels that would qualify. If you just sort of look down 58 and look at the plazas, lots of businesses on the face of it would qualify. If you look across the street, you have a pizza shop. That probably would qualify. However, it's owned by Cumberland Farms, which has more than 10 employees at all of its locations. So they wouldn't qualify. that, in that case, across the street. Another sort of issue with this is people, small businesses who occupied a space owned by, I own a strip mall and it's under $1 million in value, and there's tenants in there, and they all individually qualify. I, as the landowner, would receive the exemption, right? The discount on my taxes. There's no requirement for me then to pass that discount on to all of the tenants. Most likely their rent would stay the same and I would pay less in real estate taxes. So again, there's not a lot of businesses that qualify in town, and there's some flaws with it. Just quickly on this, I think you guys, or a town meeting, through your recommendation, it did something that was more targeted. We adopted a small personal property exemption for $1,000. So that helped a lot of the really small businesses by eliminating their personal property tax bill. So I think that sort of is a better mechanism to achieving. If you're trying to help a small business, you can always go back and revisit that and raise that amount. And again, the board is recommending that you adopt this.
All right. Is there a motion on the small business exemption?
Make the motion
Second.
The motion,
to not approve the small commercial exemption.
not adopt the
Not
small,
adopt.
okay. And second?
Second.
All right. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. All right. So now we're back to the classifying the tax rate.
And I sent, Mike spoke earlier about the towns surrounding us, so I hope you guys all had a chance. I sent over to Mark earlier today all of the towns in Plymouth County that adopt a split rate.
We did, and we have a printed copy right
Oh,
here as
perfect.
well.
Okay.
Thank you for sending that.
No problem. So, to the board's point, it just sort of shows the communities around us. This, just to note, is fiscal 2023 data, because only 4 towns in Plymouth County right now have adopted have a set tax rate and have made these decisions. But typically, they might change a percentage point here or there, but if they've got a split rate, they have a split rate. If they don't, they don't. So I think that provides you some good background, and happy to answer any questions you have about a split rate.
Mr. Ryan?
So if I understand this, you're saying that all the towns around us do not have a split rate. Is that what this data is showing? So it's
Not quite. So
it's
Middleborough has a
rare?
1.5% shift. So Middleborough will shift 5% to the commercial classes as opposed to Carver's 45%.
Oh, okay.
Brockton, right above us, is able to shift to 1.75. So Brockton shifts, just going down the list, you have Brockton, Middleborough, and West Bridgewater. So, 4 towns, including us, out of, I believe, 26 in Plymouth County shift, and we're right up at the top of what we're able to do.
Okay.
So that just provides some perspective of what, some similar towns are doing around us.
So I guess the
Mr. Ryan.
point is that, there's got to be at least 20 or 30 just local towns that are on here.
Correct.
And of them, it looks like there's a handful, like maybe 4 or so that have.
4 including us, so it's
So-
us and 3 others.
Right, so like Halifax, Hanover, Hull, Kingston, all of those do not have a split rate.
That's
They're all
correct, they have
unified.
one tax rate.
So we're kind of among the rare, it seems like, by looking at this list, to have that.
If I could just comment on that. The reason that the other towns do not, if you look at the percentage of residential properties as opposed to commercial, industrial, and personal property, we're at 84% and for residential and open space, and 15% for the value of the CIP properties. Of the ones that are here, with the exception of Plimpton, and Rockland, and West Bridgewater, their percentage of value in the commercial and industrial and personal property is much higher than, so that they can go with a single tax rate. We're at a disadvantage because the value between residential and the rest is so linked to the residential properties that it's, that by doing what we do every year with the tax rate and adjusting it, it benefits the residents. It doesn't really affect the commercial properties as much as you might think, because the shift is so little in the tax rates. And I think you gave them a copy of what potential,
Correct, yeah. It's in the packet.
it's in the packet. So in the packet, there is the,
Page 7 of the packet.
thank you. Which shows the difference in the tax rates.
Okay. And I have a follow-on question
Sure.
for the chair. So I wanted to also understand, are we actually growing CIP year over year? Or is the fact that we have a split rate potentially, impacting the growth so that we're not able to grow? Because just like the other towns, if you're able to grow your commercial, it helps everybody because you got a larger value there, and then it does have a net effect, I would think, of reducing. But if we're not able to grow because of we don't promote, I'm sure there's other factors, but how much is
The
this?
big problem is that this started in 1982.
I know.
And that was because the cranberry industry was such a huge portion of the town. To this day, it is at least 50% of all the land in the town. So when you look at where is this commercial property going to go, there's very little that's available for a commercial entity to come here and have a business. And it's been difficult to convince big companies to come here, as you may have watched over the last few years. So that is why it's hard to grow commercial here in Carver.
Okay.
Could I
Ms. Jones?
just add to that somewhat? And I appreciate your comments, Ellen, thank you for that. And I don't like to disagree with you, Mr. Paddock, but every year I always come back to the first time we did a master plan in, I think it had been 20 years, 25 years. So we went back, we redid the master plan in the year 2000. And the person who was helping us along with that said that the quantity and the quality of the businesses we would need to have in town to make a difference it would just not be Carver. It would ruin the face of Carver. And our open space and recreation plan, 75% of the residents said they like the rural character, that's extremely important to them. And I do know, to Mr. Ryan's point, up in North Carver, there's been quite a few businesses come in. And it seems to me, I don't know, because I haven't talked with them, but that it's the price of doing business. We have a lot of new stuff up there. And I just think that since the residents do bear the burden of the taxes, that I think the least we can do is try to keep it where it is, frankly.
Yeah, and I have to agree with Ms. Hewens. I think it's a long-term goal, and I've said this before, I think it would be a good long-term goal to try to reduce that shift, but I'm not sure that now is the time to do it. And, perhaps if we can get that North Carver project, that North Carver land developed and bring some businesses in there, that might be a time to relook at this, but speaking for myself, I don't think this is the time.
If I may, just, as long as the tax rate is going to remain where it is, it's going to discourage rather than encourage. commercial business owners to come here. And, you know, when this started in 1982, the farmers here were doing pretty well. Things have changed in the cranberry industry, and it's not as great as it was. And that's like 30 years ago. And 40 years ago. Oh, it's 40. Oh, my. Yeah. I am getting old. So I really am concerned about, you know, we love our rural character. We love it. And that's why we all live here, I believe. And gosh, I know that, you know, the cranberry growers and other small businesses work really, really hard every day to get their businesses going and growing, and they're not always able to do that because they have restrictions on the other end where they're taking their produce or their products. So I think we really need to consider, I really feel very strongly about lowering the residential factor, which would lower the tax rate for the commercial. I just look at all of these cranberry growers, for example, who the next generation or the next two generations are not willing to remain in the business, and it really concerns me. We don't want them to go away. They're the reason we have such a rural character here. And I think it's important that everybody understand that.
Thank you, Ms. Blanchard. All right, Mr. Ryan.
I wanted to check on the number. So at town meeting, when we do the estimation and we take, you know, the levy limit, the 2.5% and the new growth, we subtract off an overlay reserve for the estimate for town meeting. So when we do the maximum number that you're calculating based on basically the same thing, levy limit 2.5%, new growth, and excluded debt, you're not subtracting an overlay estimate off of that for the maximum, or did you? And I
No,
don't see it.
you don't subtract the overlay off of it because you're appropriating into the overlay. The overlay is part of the tax levy. Massachusetts, you assume 100% collection rate. So your overlay is essentially a reserve for bad debt. So your overlay exists to pay what is billed but otherwise isn't being collected. So it doesn't affect your levy, it's built into the levy.
Okay.
I mean, it affects your levy in the fact that you're raising money to fund it, but it's not part of your levy limit calculation.
Okay. So relative to that, so for our budget balance at town meeting, we use 31,779,091. So now we're coming back and, you know, so your maximum allowable levy is now 32,148, so it's above town meeting. So that means there's excess built in there. And so my two questions to ask you is that I'm sure there's options where you could only use the 31,779,091, but then that probably impacts us in, say, like free cash or something at the end of the year. So if we appropriate it at town meeting or use the number 31,779,000, does that mean we could conceivably have based our taxes on that or not?
So, I mean,
You know what I mean?
I'm not sure where the 31,779 is coming from.
So when we went to town meeting, we had to balance the budget. So we voted on the school budget, the town budget, the shared costs. All that came to 47,869,000. So then
Okay.
we had to match that. So we had estimates on the cherry sheet, the local receipts, and we had a tax revenue estimate. So when we estimated the cherry sheets, I think it's below what we actually got. So we've actually got more in the cherry sheet than the local receipts than we had estimated at town meeting. So I think we're up on that. But the question is, if we actually used a tax revenue of 31,779, does that mean we could actually raise taxes to that, or how does that factor into, you're proposing that we're going to tax at the higher 32.1, whereas
So-
at town meeting, we use 31.7.
So you're not taxing all the way up to, so every year when you sign the LA5, or you go on Gateway and you look at the LA5, there's something called excess levy capacity. So if you taxed all the way up to 32, 148, 116, when you hit the button, you would have zero excess levy capacity. You've used every single dollar available to you through taxation. How it is, and going back to your number before, so I mean, obviously that's looking at, I'm assuming new growth estimates are in there. So we collected 582 in new growth, and I'm not sure what was estimated, but I'm sure that's above what was estimated.
Correct.
We had amended growth from fiscal '23, which I know is in there, but again, so I mean that, you're adding 2.5% on top of that, and then you're picking up more new growth than was anticipated. So regarding the 32, so there's excess levy capacity. So we're not actually taxing all the way up to 32, 148, 116. We're taxing up to,
If you use the 1554 unified rate, then that would add up to the total, because you're taking the total value of the town, right, then.
I'm sorry, can you start that again?
So you're taking the maximum allowed levy, 32, and dividing it by the total value of all the property, right, to get your unified rate, which is the 1554, if I understand it. Then now you're taking the percentages of the 1554, so we are factoring in the total value of the town and the maximum allowable levy. I think that adds up to the 1554 number, if I.
So we're using, really close, so we're using a levy of 32,116,216. So there's roughly $30,000 of excess levy capacity, and that's because of new growth. Typically, there's between 4 and 15,000 in excess levy capacity. Sometimes it's a very tight number, sometimes it's a very large number. So the 30,000 where we're at's a really comfortable, good number to be at, in my opinion. You know, there's a little bit of wiggle room there, and there's almost $4,000, $5,000 that happens when you're rounding, because from rounding when you set the rate. So you guys adopt a factor tonight, and to the best of my ability, that's going to correlate to this tax rate. However, when we go to punch it into Gateway, it's not going to be a 140 or shift or a 145 shift. It's going to be a 140 0001678, and you're going to end up with a couple different cents.
Okay.
And that sort of accounts for some of the excess levy capacity, and then also you have new growth, like I said. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. So we use the levy, it's your budget minus your actual receipts, or estimated receipts, I should say, and what remains is the levy.
So sorry, but my point is, I guess, that what you're actually using as part of the tax levy for the value that we're raising in taxes is going to be above what we assumed at town meeting. So we're actually going to potentially, if everybody pays taxes, we're going to bring in more tax revenue than was used in the budget, which would then, what does that translate into? If we get extra money, what is that, at the end of the year, does that get accounted into, you know,
What's the difference between what they budgeted and
at town meeting?
what
And
we're working with here?
right.
Where does that extra money go?
So we're getting to what was budgeted at town meeting.
Town meeting used 31.779 million. That's what we use at town meeting for an estimate of the tax revenue, plus cherry sheets and local receipts. So if we use $31.7 million as an estimate at town meeting, that's what we approved our budget on. That's what I'm kind of
correct.
saying. So if we're going to tax people at 32 million, we're actually taxing more than what we assumed at town meeting. That's my point.
And where does that go?
And where's that money go? Yeah.
Point is,
Yeah.
revenues that come in are estimated for town meeting. They're also estimated on the tax recap, which I have here. And you can't assume that guesstimates are going to be static, that they're going to not change
Oh, I know.
from town meeting to this point. That's it. That's it.
Right.
It's all up to, did we get as much cherry sheet money? Are we expecting to get more money this year than we got last year from receipts? There's a huge difference between what we received last year
Right.
and what we're anticipating this year. It's all anticipation. We cannot come to a penny.
Okay. No,
You
sorry,
just
my,
can't-
my, I'm-
It's just not.
we could take it offline and I can ask you, but I think what I was basically saying is we're actually taxing more than what we had voted on at town meeting in a sense of what we needed for the budget. And I was just asking the question, if we do bring in more money in taxes than what we budgeted for the school and the town and the shared costs, that must go somewhere. That excess money has to be used
Well,
for.
page 4 of the recap, okay? Total appropriations for town meeting, $51,508,076.35. From raise and appropriate, $46,163,259, which is not what they originally thought or estimated at town meeting. So your difference is going to be right there. From free cash, it's almost 1.4 million. From other available funds, which is capital outlay, ambulance, cemetery, and Cranberry Village, that all came to 2.7 million. There were no offset receipts. Enterprise funds, which is just North Carver Water District, was almost 700,000. And CPA funds was almost $555,000. And then, of course, you've got the borrowing authority for the school, and that was almost 2 million. So all of those numbers are what you should be using to make your calculation.
Okay.
All right. Everyone think they're ready to? Nope. Mr. Carter.
Just looking at the sheet again, and I made some notes that might be wrong. At page 7 of your sheet.
Sure.
If we were to vote to go from the 145 to the 140, are we saying that the average home of 480,400 would see their taxes go up $72 a year from the 6,807 to the 6,879?
That's correct.
No, that's, so page 7 that's not looking year to year.
No,
So this is looking what each different shift percentage,
this year.
what the tax bill for the average single-family home would be. So if you adopted a 145 shift, the average tax bill would be 6,807. A 140 shift would be 6,879.
So I, as a taxpayer, would pay $72, 6 cents more a year in my taxes?
Well,
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, for that shift percentage, yes.
If we, you're recommending that we go, let's see, this is a reduction from, you want to go from the 145 to the 140. So if we approved it, I, as a taxpayer, would be paying $72.06 more per year in taxes, and then the commercial value, they would be paying $431 less a year in taxes,
if we did the shift.
if we did the shift.
If we vote for the shift.
'Cause I had an individual going up $337, and I was like, what, no, that can't be. But,
No.
but that's what we're
Page
looking at.
Page 8.
300.
I think we
No,
can-
So
so
you're saying-
page 8 is difference from FY '23 to FY '24. So you're looking a year-to-year comparison.
Page 7 is,
Page 7 is within this fiscal year, comparing different shift percentages.
Okay.
So they're two different,
So we, if we approve this, what is an average house, what is my tax, how much are my taxes going up? If we,
So-
if we approve this tonight?
so if you approved, let's see. So if you approved a shift of 140, your taxes would be going up on an average single-family home, $337.17.
Okay, and then the taxes would be going down on a commercial by how much?
No.
No, they would be
they're
going
going
up
up.
by $400.73. So they'd be both going
So
up
we-
roughly.
If you-
So they both go up?
yes.
They both go up. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you look at the left column, that's the percentages in increments of 5%.
What page?
Page 8.
Page 8.
Yep.
But this, oh, well, I meant, oh, yeah, well, no, page 7. I want page 7. Because the CIP shift is the percentage that's multiplied times the tax rate to raise the CIP tax rate. And then the way it works is the residential factor up top, when you raise it to 140, the residential factor becomes 0.9214. So 0.9214 times all of the residential value and plus the, if we're using 1.4. So you use the commercial tax, you're using the tax rates. And the tax rate for the 140 becomes 1432 for the residential, and for the CIP becomes 2176. So multiply 1554 times 1.4.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay.
You good, John?
Yep.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Anything else to add, folks?
So I mean, we've gone over this in the past. So you're not adopting a shift, you're going to adopt a residential factor. So whatever factor, whatever shift you would like, you'd be making a motion to adopt a residential factor.
Residential factor of 1.45, 1.4, 1.
No,
the
so
residential factor is the second column.
So if you look at page 7, it's the second column there. So if you were to adopt a 1.4, it'd be a factor of 0.9216. If you did 1.45, it'd be a factor of 0.9118.
Okay, thank you. All right.
So we're currently at 1.45, correct?
That's correct.
Can I make a motion?
You
I'm going to
certainly
make a
can.
motion to adopt a residential factor of 0.9216,
So a shift of 1.4.
which is the shift of 140%.
All right. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Is there a second? All right, the motion fails for lack of a second.
I make a motion that we adopt the residential factor of 0.9118 for a split of 145.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
So this will keep it
Yes.
The
as
same.
current.
Keep it right where it is. All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, 4-1. Thank you, folks. We always appreciate your hard work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Have a happy Thanksgiving. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute recess while we do some paperwork in relation to the tax rate. All right, folks, thank you. We are back. The next item on our agenda this evening is the town administrator update. Ms. Weston.
So this update is on the Ward Street closure.
Okay.
The engineering firm has received all the site survey information and are working on the design for the repair and reconstruction of the roadway and also of the retaining walls. A request for determination of applicability, which in conservation is known as an RDA, has been filed, and that is for the repairs. An on-site meeting is scheduled within the next week with the engineer, the project manager, the general contractor, and the operations and maintenance director. Last week, an informational update took place last Friday, and that was at the South Meadow Village Clubhouse, and that was for the residents. The town was represented by the Select Board Chair, Mark Townsend, the Town Administrator, Robert Fennessy, the Police Chief, Mark Dufely, the Fire Chief, Craig Weston, the EMS Chief, Mike Ryan, and the Director of Operations and Maintenance, Dave Siedentoff.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Weston. All right. Let's see. Approval of minutes. We have the minutes of November 7th, 2023.
Motion to approve minutes?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Let's see. Approval of licenses. There are none. Topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting. There are none. Select Board announcements. Mr. Ryan.
Go Carver. I hope we can all attend. I plan trying to be there, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Cotter?
Sure. Just wanted to let everyone know that the Carver Recreation Committee is partnering with Shane Gives Thanks for a food pantry to provide gingerbread house kits to about, they've got about 100 to give away. You can sign up at thecarverrecreation.com, and I believe the event is December 7th between 5 and 7.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Ewens?
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to remind everyone again to don't forget the Shane Gives Thanks Food Pantry, especially this time of year. And happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman?
I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving as well. Don't forget, we do have a Thanksgiving Day football game at home this year. And then the big game is next week at Gillette, so hopefully we'll see a lot of people there.
All right. Thank you. And I guess for myself, I'll just wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, and to echo Mr. Ryan's comments, go Carver. So there you are. Our next meeting is December 5th. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
should we mention the public hearing?
Yeah, we could. The public hearing has been changed to, Ms. Weston, do you have that updated date?
Yeah, on Monday.
Monday, December 11th.
Monday, December 11th.
At 6
Thank you, at
p.m.
6 p.m. here in the Town Hall meeting room. Thank you, Ms. Ewens.
Sure thing.
All right, our next meeting is December 5th. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Thank you, Area 58.